It all began with a new Kickstarter campaign from Scorched Earth Initiative on July 3 of 2021. The rebirth of the O-Ring action figure had arrived. Their campaign, Strike Force Alpha, presented 14 new military action figures similar to the 1980s and 1990s G.I. Joe. While the original design did not include an O-ring, the ball joint did function like an O-ring. The design was later changed to an actual O-ring. These Strike Force Alpha figures have a cool pop-and-swap feature that makes them very customizable within their own sphere. Zyka Toys, however, would beat everyone to the punch by releasing a 3.75-inch O-ring Riot Commando, part of the Eagle Force line, on July 20 of 2021. Previews of this figure had been shown, but it was still a surprise when the O-Ring Riot Commando was dropped on their website as actually available and not as a pre-order. While being vintage O-Ring inspired, this figure did have some updated articulation. On October 14, 2021, the action figure community came together in such strong numbers that the Robo Skull Kickstarter from Skeletron met its funding goal in just a few hours and unlocked the first 6 stretch goals in less than a day for a grand total of over $200,000. While the action figure scholars will discuss the success of this beautiful campaign for decades to come, I want to draw your attention to stretch goal number 4, the beautiful 3.75-inch O-Ring Skeletron Retro action figure made by Grindstone Toys. This figure updates the original G.I. Joe design with some new modern articulation. Not to be left behind, on October 23, 2021, Hasbro announced the return of the G.I. Joe 3.75-inch O-Ring action figure line with special re-release 2-packs along with a crowd-funded G.I. Joe Sky Striker. Unfortunately, this line was short-lived with only 3 of those 2-packs, Stinger Vehicle Driver, and the HasLab Sky Striker with 7 figures, released in 2022. While the main line is discontinued, Hasbro continues to release O-Ring G.I. Joe figures with their Transformer crossover toys. The following spring, Grindstone Toys launched their own 3.75-inch O-Ring action figure Kickstarter called Callsign Longbow. Originally, the funding goal was for 4 figures. 7 more figures were unlocked from stretch goals for a total of 11 funded figures. The art for this line was drawn by Doug Hart of G.I. Joe card art fame. Less than a month after the Callsign Longbow campaign was concluded, the ambitious Operation Recall Kickstarter launched. Spearheaded by Carson Metaxas from 3D Joe's, his dream was to bring the band back together for one last 3.75-inch O-Ring action figure line by the team who worked on the original G.I. Joe toy line. After gathering fan submissions, the team worked on and fleshed out 19 new 3.75-inch O-Ring figures. Instead of creating the figures in the classic O-Ring style as the original G.I. Joe figures, these figures will have updated articulation, be various shapes and sizes, and feature a new piece to replace and simulate an O-Ring. The interesting twist to this line is that Carson has documented every step of the process in video form. The final 3.75-inch O-Ring Kickstarter of 2022 was Easy Kill 9 that launched a few days after Operation Recall. This campaign proposed about 10 figures with a story that centered around operatives fighting zombies. Ultimately, the campaign did not fund. Legends of the Hidden Force would be the first Kickstarter of 2023. It was a new line of 3.75-inch O-Ring ninjas that have updated articulation. The base funding level was for 6 figures, with 18 more figures to unlock with stretch goals. Whiskey Jack Toys decided to voluntarily end the Kickstarter early to rework the campaign. Whiskey Jack Toys relaunched about a month later with a lower goal and 4 figures at funding, with 11 more figures as stretch goals. This time they were successful. The 3.75-inch O-Ring in the Navy Kickstarter went live on June 16, 2023. The company Heavy Armor Toys was already in production of 2 O-Ring figures, a commando and a SWAT officer. Only 2 figures would be available at the funding goal, with an additional 11 figures for stretch goals. Ultimately, 6 figures were funded. These figures have updated articulation. On July 25, 2023, Zyka Toys brought back Easy Kill 9 with a revamped Kickstarter campaign. This time, 1 figure would be unlocked at the funding goal, with 3 more figures as stretch goals. This second campaign also failed, and the future of these figures are uncertain at this time. Zyka Toys would try another 3.75-inch O-ring action figure Kickstarter on October 16, 2023. This time they launched their brand new Retros Classic O-ring figures. This campaign contained 6 figures that included 3.75-inch versions of Fist characters, a previously failed 1/12 scale action figure line, and 2 Pocket People action figures. Unfortunately, this campaign did not fund either. Zyka Toys has said they will be reworking the idea and returning sometime in the future. The final 3.75-inch O-ring news of 2023 came in the form of a big Super 7 announcement. The company that has been creating the G.I. Joe reaction figures has gotten the go-ahead from Hasbro to create new O-ring G.I. Joe figures. During the Cobra Mothership crowdfunding campaign, we got a small sneak peek of what their O-ring figures will look like. As of right now, that figure will not be produced because the Mothership failed to fund. Super 7's O-ring figures are scheduled for fall of 2024. Finally, we come to Delta 17, a modern military-themed, fully funded, non-crowd-funded 3.75-inch O-ring line of action figures. During 2023, there wasn't a lot of information about this line until the end of the year when reviews started popping up on YouTube. There are 12 figures in total and all have updated articulation. While some people have received these figures, it is unclear when they will be available for purchase. As it currently stands, we are waiting on most of these groups to produce and fulfill their 3.75-inch O-ring action figures. I don't know if any new crowdfunding projects will be out this year or if we have to wait for the dust to settle on fulfillment from previous campaigns. Either way, there are a lot of cool action figures coming out over the next 2 years.